Flashbulbs cracked like dry lightning and then held, a white that flattened faces and made the memorial hall smell faintly of hot glass and floor polish. My palms stung where the folded banner's edge bit in. Cotton starched hard enough to scrape a crescent into my skin. I kept my hand steady. The cameras needed steadiness more than truth. "Lieutenant Monroe," the master of ceremonies said, voice lacquered. A gloved soldier placed the flag in my arms. Weightless in theory, heavy in memory. Dog tags in my pocket tapped a nervous metronome against my thigh. Tick, 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 the only sound that belonged to me. A general leaned close, breath mint in ceremony. "Your husband died with honor," he whispered. "Let that be enough." 4 words slid under my skin like ice. Let that be enough. I nodded because the room demanded choreography. Because the flags along the walls were watching. Because my grief hadn't yet learned to argue in public. I lifted the triangle to my chest until the seam's rough stitch pressed against my heart. The stars were so clean they looked sterilized. Applause rose. Polite thunder. The microphones hummed. Somewhere behind me, a child tried to copy a salute and used 2 fingers. A woman in black corrected him gently. I thought of Aaron's laugh when things were absurd, and how he had stopped laughing the last month home. He'd stared past me at a TV with the sound off and said, quietly, "Sometimes the mission doesn't deserve the soldiers it gets." I'd filed the sentence under later. Later had arrived without mercy. I carried the banner down the aisle. The hall's carpet muffled my boots, red swallowing sound. The air tasted like old paper and rose water, the 2 scents you use when you want grief to behave. Portraits of men who never bled in front of cameras stared with expensive solemnity as we passed. I kept my spine straight and my mouth shut and felt the dog tags tap tick, 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 tick. At home, the apartment's dark was a mercy. I set the triangle on the table and stood there until the silence stopped bristling. The room smelled like coffee gone cold, and the lemon oil I'd used on the bookshelf the afternoon before everything. I pulled his footlocker close. Metal squealed against wood. The sound went through me like a wire. Inside, folded uniforms, a battered field notebook, sand in the seams like the desert had stowed away to watch me. Under the notebook, taped to the lid with dull green duct tape, a drive waited. Black plastic, scarred like a knuckle. Sharpie on the casing in his cramped hand. For Grace, if they call me a traitor. My breath snagged. The dog tags clicked hard, ticker jumping a beat. I pressed my thumb to the letters until the plastic warmed and the words felt like skin. Somewhere outside, a siren Dopplered by. Here, time stopped. I sat. The chair's cold metal bit through my uniform and into bone. I ran my finger once along the fold of the flag. The fabric rasped. Honest. I palmed the drive. Weight barely there. Consequence, everything. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room, to the triangle, to the tags, to him. "Let's see what you died for." The laptop woke with a tired sigh. The screen's light turned my hands ghost pale. I slid the drive in. It clicked. A small, irrevocable sound, and the world, for a breath, felt like it was holding itself still so I could hear. We signed on the same day because it felt romantic to hand the future our names in tandem. The recruiter's office smelled like toner and floor cleaner. The pen they gave me left a faint smear on my ring finger that wouldn't wash off until morning. Aaron grinned like a lighthouse. Steady, bright, the kind of smile you use to find shore. "Same oath," he said, bumping my shoulder. "Same trouble." We were 20 and bulletproof in all the wrong ways. Basic tasted like dirt and brass. He outran everyone. I outread everyone. At night, we'd meet on a bleached bench behind the barracks and trade bruises like kids comparing constellations. He'd tilt his head, listening to far-off rotor wash with a reverence that embarrassed me. "That sound," he said, "is a promise to somebody." He wore his dog tags outside his shirt until a drill sergeant snarled him into regulation. After that, the tags lived under fabric, but they still announced him, tick, 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 when he jogged stairs 2 at a time. He went reconnaissance, I went intelligence. On paper, it looked like we split. In truth, our skill sets made a braid. The map in his head, the pattern in mine. At the range, he shot groups that looked printed. In the skiff, I learned to make noise confess. We were insufferable and in love. He proposed by hiding a ring in a MRE pound cake. I said yes with my mouth full and got lemon crumbs on his sleeve. We laughed so hard a corporal threatened to smoke us for disrespecting dessert. First deployment. Dust everywhere. A fine tan film that turned the world into a sepia photograph. The heat crawled into your bones and scratched from the inside. I learned to sleep through generators and wake to radio hiss. He wrote letters on Write in the Rain paper that smelled faintly of chemical and hope, each line a map of the day's small mercies. When his squad rotated back, he came off the bus thinner, sharper, like someone had filed him down to the edge he'd always implied. We married in a chapel that cherished starch and precision. The chaplain's breath fogged his glasses when he said honor. I wore my dress blues. His bow tie sat a degree off center until I fixed it with 2 fingers and a look. Recon guy needs a commo girl, he whispered at the altar. Who else will keep my frequencies honest? The kiss was soft and practiced, like we'd both been training to make this part look easy. The second deployment didn't send letters, it sent lacunae. He stopped narrating his days. Calls got shorter, then vanished under can't discuss and mission tempo. When he did speak, he spoke around the thing, like a man stepping over a board he knew was loose. I watched the news feeds for shapes I recognized and found only rectangles of flags and words that sounded like the meeting minutes of a war. Stability operations, decisive action, proportional response. The TV's blue light made our kitchen look like a morgue. He came home late to himself. He would stand in the shower until the water ran cold, then sit on the edge of the tub like the tile could hold him together. The first night, he woke choking on air, hands up in a push that knocked our headboard into the wall hard enough to make a picture tilt. It's okay, I said, palms open near his shoulders like I was approaching a skittish horse. He blinked down through whatever weather had blown in and found me. I know, he said. His voice sounded sanded. I'm just not. We stopped going to cookouts. The jokes at those things were the wrong shape. People said thank you for your service like a period you could use to end any sentence. He rolled the words around in his mouth afterward and spit them into the sink. Sometimes, he said finally, the mission doesn't deserve the soldiers it gets. He said it without heat, which frightened me more than anger would have. I tried to ask. The SIF trained me to pry signals out of static. Marriage does not. Is it the op tempo? The losses? I offered categories like a menu. He stared at the TV on mute, where graphics drew arrows on a country that did not want our arrows. It's deciding who counts as worth saving, he said. He tapped his chest twice with 2 fingers, a rhythm I'd never seen him use. This keeps arguing with the rest. When Falcon Vale hit the schedule, he ironed his uniform like a man paying off a debt in small, precise bills. He kissed me in the doorway, soft, the way you apologize when you can't afford the time for words. Back soon, he said. The hall light made his face a half coin, one side bright, one side shadow. I put my palm to his cheek and felt him memorize the temperature. Don't make me a widow, I said, voice checking for wobble. He smiled, but his eyes did not. You'd win that argument, he said. Then he left. The days after were lists, groceries, laundry, comm summaries, time hacks. The nights were a vestibule where sleep loitered but didn't commit. I lay on my side and listened to the radiator tick like a metronome that hadn't learned any other song. When the base liaison knocked on the door, the hallway smelled like someone else's dinner and clean stairwell paint. Her face was arranged into the shape grief recognizes and obeys. We regret to inform you. A phrase engineered to walk straight to the kitchen chair and sit me down. The official report was 3 pages, ambushed by insurgents. The verbs were too straight, the adjectives worked too hard. There were no scratches where there should have been blood. I read it 3 times and felt less each time, like the document was sanding something off me. I called the number at the bottom. A captain with a voice like pressed shirts told me the details were classified. For your peace, he said. My dog tags ticked in my pocket like a timer. In the memorial hall, the general's whisper tried to fold my grief into a box that would stack neatly with the others. Your husband died with honor. Let that be enough. I nodded because I didn't know yet. Because I wanted to borrow the simplicity on offer. Because everyone staring had a job for my face. At home, I put the flag on the table, set the report beside it, and opened the footlocker for something that didn't smell like official language. Under the field notebook, tucked where only a recon man would hide a thing he didn't want found by a cursory search, the drive waited. The Sharpie looked fresh, lines dark and unflinching, for Grace, if they call me a traitor. I held it and felt my past tilt toward me like a door finally choosing a direction. The dog tags knocked my thigh twice, tick, tick, as if seconding the motion. I remembered the first time he dragged me toward the flight line just to let the rotor wash lift our shirts and make fools of us. "You feel that?" He'd shouted over the chop, eyes bright. "That's what rescue sounds like." The sound in my apartment now was the refrigerator motor easing on, a domestic hum that suddenly felt like courage. I slid the drive into my pocket, felt its thin rectangle settle against bone, and knew two things with the cool clarity the job had given me. The report was too clean for Aaron Monroe, and whatever lived on that drive was going to make the hallway outside my door very crowded, very fast. Before I plugged it in, I laid my palm on the folded flag. The seam scratched my skin again, small, insistent. "You deserved a mission that deserved you." "Yeah," I told the cotton, the room, the man who had left me instructions written in plastic. The words didn't make anything easier, they made it possible. Then I stood, turned on the lamp, and chose the light. The laptop's fan breathed warm on my wrists, a small mechanical animal trying to keep up. The screen washed the room in cold light. The folded flag on the table turned blue as aquarium coral. I plugged in the drive. It clicked, a little tooth finding its groove, and a folder bloomed. Grace open. "If I'm gone." Double-click. A passphrase prompt pulsed. He had taught me our ciphers back when we practiced lying only to strangers. I typed the date we got sandblasted by rotor wash on our first airfield kiss, 0716, then the tail number he'd whispered like superstition. The lock icon blinked, considered our past, and slid aside. Logs unfolded like a spine. Frago Rev 5, Evac Rota, Alpha, SIGAX excerpts, a folder named Eyes Only on Pierce. I could smell hot plastic from the laptop's vents and my own breath going shallow. The dog tags in my pocket tapped once, tick, as if my body needed a metronome. I opened the orders first. Evac helicopter manifests that shouldn't have moved did. Coordinates marked Kiev Safe Corridor were crossed out in a second hand and replaced with a grid that hugged a VIP compound like a secret. 2 birds diverted within 12 minutes of a village distress call. Pierce's initials trailed the margins, RP, in the small, clipped strokes of a man who had learned to hide decisions in abbreviations. Audio next. The file name wore a bland face. AIR traffic, Seg B Wav. Hiss, rotor thump. A pilot's voice tight. Falcon dustoff, copy evac corridor. Then a second voice I recognized from 1,000 briefings and one funeral whisper, Colonel Raymond Pierce. Negative, reroute to LZ Bravo. Priority extraction, code white. "Sir," the pilot said, tension sliding under discipline, "we have civilian beacons at Alpha." "Stand down," Pierce replied, not raising his voice, as if quiet could make the order clean. "Execute Bravo." The room shrank to the size of the waveform. I felt heat in my face and cold in my hands. I scrolled. Another clip? Ground net. Sand skittered through open mics like teeth. Then Aaron, raw, uncamouflaged. "Sir, you're diverting evac choppers for a personal extraction. There are families out there." Silence, a breath, Pierce again. "Stand down, Captain." Aaron. "Not while civilians burn for your mistakes." He didn't call him sir that time. I tasted metal. A folder labeled Helmet Cam waited like a door in a dark hallway. Inside, timestamps, file pairs, an angle tag I didn't recognize until I saw it. Helm Jam Capt Monroe .move. My name fit badly inside his rank. I pressed play. The image jittered, then steadied. Dust hung in heat like thought. A flare burned white at frame right, hissing, furious, painting everything around it in a fake daylight that made shadows look like guilt. Figures moved, soldiers dragging tarps, a woman with both hands up, a child clinging to her hip. The mic caught someone praying in a language my training had taught me to classify and my marriage had taught me to respect. Abort! Aaron's voice, close to the mic now, turned my body to glass. Those aren't hostiles! The lens swung as he ran. He shouldered through two men, shoved a metal stand aside so hard it rang, then planted himself between the flare and the sky. A human blackout curtain. He waved both arms, no, 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 the oldest semaphore. A hand grabbed his sleeve. He shook it off without looking. You could hear the rotor's appetite building. Off frame, a comms cursor beeped a steady, obdurate heartbeat. Captain? Pierce's voice came over the net, cool, close, threaded through every radio like water through pipes. You're out of line. Aaron didn't answer the voice. He answered the machine. Kill the beacon. Kill it now. His shoulder filled the bottom of the frame, uniform dark with sweat, patches grimy with place. I knew the exact distance between those seams because I had sewn one back on in a hotel room in El Paso with a travel kit and a prayer. The camera swung again, reflex, catching a sliver of Pierce at the edge of the LZ. Sunglasses, cap pulled low, mouth a straight cut. His hand lifted, 2 fingers, a small motion that moved a lot of air. Do it, he said. That's an order. The flare burned hotter. The audio clipped, a compressed scream of chemistry. The ground team hesitated the way people do when the world has chosen badly and they want permission to be braver than their training. No permission came. The next frame blew out white. Then, pop, pop, too clean for insurgents upwind and too close for mercy. Not the stuttering chaos of an ambush, the deliberate punctuation of men inside the perimeter. The camera broke left and fell. The last image fixed itself on boots and bright grit and the edge of a sleeve I recognized. Pierce's. The audio caught one word from Aaron, only the first half, civil. Then everything went loud, and then it went small, and then it went nothing. I paused the frame. The room's silence took on weight until it felt like a wall leaning. The dog tags in my pocket touched each other and stopped moving. No tick. My throat burned like I'd swallowed smoke. I rewound 3 seconds and watched again. His step into the flare. His hands. His promise to a camera that didn't deserve it. Freeze. At the far edge, a muzzle flashed from a shadow under the wind-buckled tarp. Friendly position. Wrong adjective. My hand found the folded banner's seam. The stitch rasped my fingertip like sand on enamel. The general's whisper from the memorial hall replayed, "Let that be enough." The desktop blued the room, polite as a hospital. I opened a text file titled, "Read this first text." Aaron's handwriting in a photo filled the screen. He'd photographed a page from his field notebook because he didn't trust typed things to keep their souls. Grace, if they called me a traitor, they needed my silence more than I needed their ranks. The evac birds were diverted for a white extraction. I stepped in. I will keep stepping until somebody shoots me or obeys. If this reaches you, the wrong man will be in a folded triangle. Don't let them make me smaller. Do not bring this to Pierce. He owns the room. Bring it to light. The words had the same neat, stubborn block he used when he wrote grid chords on his palm. I read the note twice and then pressed my palm to the screen like I could carry the heat back into the letters. The glass was cool. My skin learned its limits and let go. I copied the drive to a secure stick and then to a second one because the job had made me superstitious. I slid one into the hollow I'd carved in the baseboard last winter while waiting for him to call back. I put the other inside the folded flag at the crease where a seamstress had left a polite aperture. Then I dialed the number you call when your career has decided to stop pretending. Shaw, came the voice. Smoke, gravel, patience. Major, I said. It's Grace. I have something and a target on my back. She didn't ask what. She asked where. I kept the laptop open while we planned because I wanted the room to know its witness. The video idled on the frozen frame of Aaron's hands, cutting the air into a new shape. Outside, a siren found its pitch and slid away. Inside, the laptop fan warmed my wrists until the skin there went pink, living. When we hung up, the apartment felt different by a degree you wouldn't notice, unless your life depended on noticing degrees. I stood, stretched the ache out of my shoulders, and went to the window. Down on the street, the base liaison sedan crawled by too slow to be casual. I let the curtain fall back into place, smooth, quiet. At the table, I set the flag atop the report and the drive atop the flag. Weight on weight. Truth above ritual. The dog tags in my pocket resumed their tick, a steadier tempo. Aaron had said, "Bring it to light. Light is rude and necessary." I shut the laptop, pocketed the stick, and started drafting a plan that would make rooms louder than Pierce's. I reported it clean. Chain of command, subject line antiseptic. Evac diversion. Evidence attached. The classified portal hissed its little approval tone. The upload bar crept like an injured thing and then snapped green. The office smelled like stale coffee and whiteboard marker. My hands left damp moons on the desk where my palms had been. The dog tags in my pocket tapped the laminate. Tick, tick, impatient prayer. 24 hours later, a captain with a clipboard and a voice ironed flat said, "Psych eval, effective immediately." The word immediately had the chill of a window left open in winter. "I'm not unstable," I said. "Grief distorts perception," he replied, not looking up. 7 syllables. Practiced cruelty. They took my laptop like it was contagious. The skiff door sighed shut behind my credentials, now politely revoked. A tech in nitrile gloves slid my access cards into an envelope with a papery whisper that felt like throat clearing before a lie. "We'll review the media while blah," she said. "Make backups," I answered. Truth hates single points of failure. At home, the bolt hung at a bad angle. Splintered jam. Inside smelled wrong. Detergent and intrusion. Drawers open, uniforms gone. The footlocker lid stood yawning. Tape peeled back with fussy care. My breath stuttered, then flattened into training. Secure stick? Still in the hollow. The second? Tucked in the flag's crease, right where I'd left it. The cotton's rough seam pressing against plastic like a promise. The TV did the rest. My husband's photo bloomed under a new Chiron. Monroe under espionage review. The anchor's tone was clinical empathy, the kind that lets a story keep bleeding without dirtying the suit. I stood in the blue flicker and watched Traitor crawl past Aaron's eyes. The dog tags in my pocket went still. Even metal needed a heartbeat to keep time. Mine had just borrowed it. Enough, I told the empty room. I packed what mattered. The flag, the sticks, the field notebook that still smelled faintly of dust and sweat. I drove to a diner 2 exits off post, where the coffee tasted like burned bread, and the waitress called everyone Han. Major Evelyn Shaw arrived 10 minutes later, rain freckling her leather jacket, gray hair pulled into the kind of knot you tie when you intend to work. "Show me," she said. I slid the notebook, the printed logs, the stick. Her fingers were efficient. Callus, pen, patience. The heater under the booth breathed a low, steady warmth against my shins. "Pierce?" she asked. "Yes." "He's protected," she said. "For now." "He's a thief," I said. "He stole the birds." She nodded at the video frame I'd paused, Aaron stepping into white. "He stole the word ambush, too." We moved to a cheap motel with a humming ice machine and curtains the color of old teeth. Evelyn set up her battered laptop. I laid out paper on the round table until it looked like a topographical map of malice. We spoke in short sentences to keep oxygen for the work. "Chain of custody?" she asked. "Documented the copy, redacted the rest." "Alternate path?" "Civilian ally," I said. "A reporter with spine." "Name?" "Alan Chen." She smirked. "He owes me a favor. He always will." We split tasks. She chased metadata like a bloodhound, nose deep in hex and hash. I lined the evacuation manifests along the wall in chronological rows until the diversion presented itself like a bent river. In the next room, an air unit wheezed. Somewhere down the hall, ice rattled into a paper cup. I could smell hot dust and motel soap. The dog tags kept time against my palm. Tick, tick, tick. At 0200, I dreamed of rotor wash, turning sand into scripture. I woke with the taste of metal in my mouth and the sense of being watched. The peephole showed nothing. The peephole never does. I texted Alan. "Drop soon. Secure line only." 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Reappeared. Here. We leaked in stitches, not a gush. 15 seconds of audio. Reroute to LZ Bravo, priority extraction. A still of Aaron's silhouette cutting the flare. A manifest page with Pierce's initials looping smug in the margin. Evelyn ghosted the drop through 3 dead accounts. Alan's piece hit a small site first, then the wires. The comments section burned white for an hour and then turned cruel. Truth always passes through fire on its way to oxygen. By morning, the base declared me temporarily non-deployable and helpfully provided a therapist who smelled like cinnamon gum and wrote hypervigilance in a notebook big enough to bury people in. Grief can create narratives, she said, voice textured like tissue. Orders created corpses, might I said. She lowered her pen by a millimeter. Be careful, Lieutenant. Pierce wasn't. We relocated to a friend of a friend's garage. 1 bare bulb, oil smell, a folding table that bowed under printers. Evelyn patched the audio for clarity without touching its bones. I printed 3 copies of everything and hid them 3 places. When the bulb flickered, we spoke in darkness until it steadied. In the black, I could hear the dog tags click when my breath moved, and under it, the imagined whoop-whoop of blades we didn't have the right to call. The notice hit my inbox at noon. Subject administrative leave extended. My inbox coughed again. Cease and desist. Unauthorized disclosure. I printed both, pressed a coffee ring into their lower corners, and filed them under noise. Evelyn found the lever that would make a bigger room listen. House Subcommittee on Armed Services. Classified mission misconduct. The hearing had been a performative scold until now. She sent a single-line email to a staffer who owed her daylight. You're about to get the tape that saves your soul. We rehearsed my sentence until it fit like a sling. Then consider this an act of loyalty to the truth. Evelyn cut it shorter. Act of loyalty. She made me repeat loyalty until my mouth could say it without tasting their definition. On the 3rd night, someone tried our motel door. A soft scrape. A pause. The cylinder ticked. Evelyn stood up in the dark and slid a chair under the knob without a sound. We waited, breathing through our noses, the old infantryman trick to keep air quiet. The hallway's carpet swallowed footfalls. The scrape moved on. The chair's leg creaked back a fraction as the door reclaimed itself. The dog tags were a hard coin in my fist. I didn't unclench until the ice machine coughed again. At dawn, I ironed my uniform on the motel's board, steam rising with the thin metallic smell of heated tap water. The cloth scratched my forearms. I pinned my nameplate straight. Evelyn watched the news on mute. Chirons doing their restless crawl. Pierce's face in B-roll shaking hands with men who would forget him on cue. You ready? She asked. No, I said, and slid the secure stick into my breast pocket where the heat of me would keep it alive. I'm right. We drove to the hill in a car that knew better than to ask our names. The subcommittee room smelled like old wood and fluorocarbon. The microphones purred their low, predatory hum. Flags hung in their trained poses. I set the sealed folder on the witness table and felt the paper's weight convince the wood it had work. A clerk leaned in, breath like peppermints. Lieutenant Monroe, you're not on the witness list. Correct, I said. You're not authorized to speak. I kept my voice in its lane. Then consider this an act of loyalty. To the truth. He blinked. He'd practiced a lot of scenarios, not this one. Behind him, a camera's tally light blinked ready red. I could feel it between my shoulder blades like a bead of heat. Pierce entered through a side door with the practice of a man who likes side doors. He took a seat along the wall, jaw clean-shaven, eyes engineered to be unreadable. He didn't look at me. I didn't give him the privilege of my gaze. The chairman called the session to order with a small, tidy rap. Air shifted, paper shuffled. Evelyn, 3 rows back, folded her arms and became geography, mountain, not movable. I slid the drive across the polished wood. Plastic made that small, irreversible click when it met the port. The monitors woke. Audio hissed, then found itself. Reroute to LZ Bravo, Pierce's voice said to a nation. Priority extraction. I didn't look at him. I watched the room instead, the way shoulders found angles, the way denial lost its footing on stairs. The flare bloomed on the screens, the hiss squirming under the speaker's limits. Aaron's silhouette stepped into white and cut a country's flattering light in half. Stand down, Captain, Pierce said over the net. Not while civilians burn, Aaron answered. The blast erased the frame. The gunshots annotated it. The last syllable from my husband's mouth hung, unfinished, in a room that had finally learned to stop finishing sentences for the dead. Someone in the back whispered, reverent and stunned, "She brought him back from the dead." The chairman's gavel didn't bang. It landed. The microphones breathed. The tally lights burned. The dog tags in my pocket ticked once, twice, and then fell still, as if they too were standing. The hearing room ran hot under the lights. Camera heat, not weather. I could smell varnish waking on the desk and the peppermints the clerk liked, sharp and clean. The microphones gave their low, woolly hiss. The red tally beads glowed along the back wall like watchful eyes. Pierce sat 2 tables over, spine at parade rest, ring tapping once against his folder. Tick, tick, trying to borrow the dog tag's authority. "Lieutenant Monroe," the chairman said, "you are not on our docket." I kept my hands flat, the drive warm against my ribs. Then consider this loyalty. To the truth. Sophia Torres, major now, hair tight, eyes steady, passed the clerk a signed authentication. "Chain verified," she said, voice trimmed of drama. "Metadata intact." The footage rolled again, this time to a country that couldn't look away. The flare roared white on the screens, the hiss turning the speakers into snakes. Aaron's silhouette cut across the beam, arms wide. "Abort! Those aren't hostiles!" "Aren't." The second voice followed. Pierce, smooth as glass. "Do it. That's an order." "Pause," the chairman said. The frame froze on Aaron's mouth. Civil. Unfinished. "Colonel Pierce," he asked, turning, "who ordered the diversion?" Pierce's jaw flexed once. "Context is classified." "Name," and I said, "1 syllable. Clean." His eyes flicked past me to the front row. General Whitaker, same chest, same ribbons, same funeral whisper from a week ago, sat forward, hands laced, knuckles bloodless. The room tasted suddenly of ozone, the way air does before lightning. "White extraction came from theater," Pierce said at last. "Code white. General-level directive." Whitaker didn't rise. He didn't need to. His voice carried like a colonel's bad memory. "Protect the mission," he said. 4 words, cut deep. "We adapt." "You diverted evac birds, I said, pulse in my wrists. "Families burned." Whitaker's gaze slid to the flag in the corner, then back. Small prayer to a cloth he'd used as a curtain. "Fog of war." "Fog doesn't give orders," I answered. The chairman nodded at Torres. She brought up a comms log, green text on black, timestamp, route change, authentication key. Side by side, the signature block, Whitaker Jen. The room made that old animal sound, hurt recognizing itself. Pierce's ring stopped tapping. His voice dropped in pitch, closer to his truth. "We followed law." "You followed pride," I said. He snapped, short as a slap. "Control saves lives." "Not that day," I said, and slid the sealed folder forward. "Transcript, ground net, last 3 minutes." The speakers crackled. A pilot. "Civilian beacons at Alpha." Whitaker. "Bravo priority." Aaron, breathless, urgent. "Kill the beacon." The gunshots, 2, then 1, too close to be foreign. Torres stepped to the mic. "Angle and powder residue confirm inside perimeter fire." No adjectives. No mercy. The chairman looked at Whitaker. "General," Whitaker smoothed an invisible wrinkle on his trouser crease. The nation requires the dead to be named right," I said. My voice stayed level, my hands did not shake. I rose. The dog tags in my pocket kissed once, soft metal on metal. I set the folded flag on the table, pressed the crease hard enough to feel the stick I'd hidden there. "They buried his body," I said, each word finding weight. "I buried their lie." Gasps, then quiet, thick as felt. From the back row a veteran stood. He saluted the frozen frame of Aaron's silhouette. Another stood, then another. The room didn't applaud. It stood, sleeves whispering, leather creaking, a geometry of respect aligning itself without orders. The chairman's gavel landed once. "Effective immediately," he said, voice stripped of theater. "We reclassify. died in defense of civilian lives, killed preventing friendly fire. We refer the matter of unlawful orders and cover-up to the Inspector General and recommend immediate suspension of General Whitaker and arrest of Colonel Pierce. Pierce reached for his ring and missed. MPs moved, hands careful, not kind. Whitaker didn't fight. Pride rarely knows how. Cameras held the room open as the men who had made my husband small found their correct size. I kept my palm on the flag. Its seam rasped my skin, real fabric, not myth. The lights hummed. The microphones breathed. The country, for a full minute, remembered how to be silent on purpose. The hearing led out into a rain-polished afternoon. Marble smelled like wet paper. The flag above the steps darkened to a deeper blue that looked more honest than the bright kind. Reporters clustered beneath umbrellas like birds deciding whether to peck or prey. Microphones reached. The red tally lights were gone. Only a soft civilian gray remained. Lieutenant Monroe, just one question. Do you feel vindicated? Was he a traitor or a hero? I held the folded flag at my ribs, the cloth dampening where the rain found it. The dog tags in my pocket pressed a familiar oval against my palm, cool, exact. He wasn't a traitor, I said, keeping my voice even so the sentence could stand upright without me. He was the only one who refused a dishonorable order. Pens paused. No one cheered. Respect doesn't clap when it finally remembers its job. By evening, the formal notice arrived. Courier envelope heavy as confession. Reclassification. Died in defense of civilian lives. Killed preventing friendly fire. The seal raised against my thumb. The paper carried the clean smell of a new ledger. A second envelope followed on its heels like a shadow. Referral to the Inspector General. Unlawful orders and cover-up. The lines were plain, no heroics, just verbs that finally earned their pay. Major Torres called from a hallway that hummed fluorescent. Pierce is in custody, she said, voice practical, tired. Whitaker suspended pending IG. You'll get an official correction for the record by morning. Use the right verbs, I said. We did, she answered, and I believed her. I walked home through a city rinsed of its dust. Tires hissed on wet asphalt. The air tasted metallic like the hour had scraped off a layer of old lie. In the stairwell, the light buzzed. Faint. Insect soft. My door sat straight in its frame again. The super had replaced the splintered jamb with a strip of fresh wood that still smelled like saw. On the mat, a small square box the size of regret. No note. Brown paper, twine tied tight as a stitch. I carried it to the table and cut the string. Inside, on black felt, lay Aaron's dog tags. Polished to a dull shine, the chain rehung, the edges deburred the way quartermasters do when they've decided to treat a name correctly. I lifted them and felt their cool weight settle into my hand, the metal clicking once like a polite knock. The letters were the same. The story had changed around them. I hung the tags on the frame of our wedding photo for a minute, just to see the geometry of it. Fabric triangle, metal oval, two young idiots laughing at lemon crumbs on a sleeve. Then I slipped the tags back into my pocket where they belonged. The chain made a small sound against my ring. Tick. The phone pinged with an interview request. 3 outlets, 2 networks, 1 podcast that spelled integrity with a capital I in its pitch. I declined them all. When a reporter caught me outside the bodega and asked for a statement, I gave her the only one that didn't feel like performance. The truth doesn't dishonor the dead, I said. It resurrects them. I slept for 6 hours straight, the first such sleep since the folded flag had entered my house. Dream stayed on the other side of the door. In the morning, sun found the seam of the triangle and warmed it. Dust lifted in the light like clear breath. The correction arrived at 0900 in a tidy PDF and a paper copy hand-delivered by a sergeant who wore his uniform like a promise he still believed in. He saluted the flag on my table before he saluted me. Ma'am, he said, eyes not straying to the corner where I'd left the opened lock hardware in a small shame pile. From the committee. I signed. He left the envelope in a silence I didn't have to fill. Evelyn swung by with coffee that steam whispered up through the lid. She looked at the tags hanging off my finger and let herself smile. Sharp, proud. Well, Record's clean, I said. Paper finally caught up. She tapped the folder with one knuckle. Paper always follows. It never leads. We planned nothing. The big room had heard what it needed. The rest was housekeeping. Sworn statements, custody logs, the long tail of an investigation that would move slower than grief, but in the same direction. That evening, I stood at the stove stirring soup because the body still keeps score. The window over the sink framed a sliver of base housing across the street. A child tugged at a flag on a porch until a parent's hand eased it free and showed the right way. The radio murmured quietly on the counter. No pundits, no thunder, just weather and a baseball score that sounded like a small town keeping itself honest. When the knock came, soft and doubled, I knew the rhythm. Evelyn's. She stepped in without performance. Walk? She asked. We went to the river. The water slid by with ordinary patience. On the far bank, floodlights brushed a flight line into silhouette. Rotors at rest, noses pointed toward the kind of morning someone would need. The air smelled faintly of jet fuel and wet dirt. I took the dog tags from my pocket and let the chain slip through my knuckles to the rhythm of my steps. Tick, tick, tick. Motive, not metronome. Tomorrow, Evelyn said, they'll try to make it about politics. Tomorrow, I said, I'll make it about verbs. We turned back when the first cold found the bones in our wrists. In the lobby, the super pointed to a small package pinned under a rubber band on the mail table. Inside, a photocopy of the hearing transcript, highlighted at a single line. They buried his body. I buried their lie. Someone had underlined buried twice and written, thank you in a pen that blotted at the start of the T. No signature, just breath on paper. I set the transcript under the flag. The drive, the first one, still rode in the crease, quiet, job done. My palm found the seam and pressed until the fabric warmed under my skin. I could hear rotor wash in memory, the flares hiss in my bones, the way rain had darkened the flag outside the Capitol until it looked like it could finally breathe. On the way to bed, I caught myself whispering to an empty room and didn't feel foolish. You stayed a soldier, I told him. The words made the air heavier by a good ounce, the way blankets settle when you find the right corner. In the morning, I'd go where the map now pointed, south and empty, because some truths need landscape to be complete. The desert that kept his last hour deserved a witness who wasn't holding a camera. The plaque would be there now, the wind too. I wanted both. The desert kept its own silence, wind combing low scrub, sun bleaching edges until even memory squinted. Heat came off the plaque in a wavering veil. When I touched the bronze, it burned just enough to say I was here. The air smelled like hot dust and aviation fuel drifted from a far strip. Faint, ghost thin, like a promise trying to find a mouth. The new inscription caught the light and held it. Captain Aaron Monroe. Fell protecting the innocent. Below it, a smaller line. Died in defense of civilian lives. Killed preventing friendly fire. Verbs that finally did their jobs. I knelt. Sand pressed through my pant leg, rough as honesty. I set the flash drive in the shade under the stone, plastic against earth, proof learning to rest. Your truth made me brave enough to tell mine, I whispered. Wind lifted the words, then laid them down where they belonged. Somewhere out on the flats, a helicopter thudded awake, rotor wash turning grit into a short-lived storm. For a second, the sound brought back the flare, the white roar, the hiss. Then it softened into what it had always meant to us. Rescue. Arriving. I let the noise fade until only insects ticked and my own breath kept time. I unhooked his dog tags and let them hang from my fingers. The metal cooled my skin. The chain clicked once, soft, exact, before I looped it over the corner of the marker. Name on metal, name on stone. The distance between them felt smaller than it had ever been. Reporters had asked me what it felt like to win. There was no victory here, just alignment. Paper to truth, rank to consequence, grief to work. I smoothed the flag patch inside my pocket with my thumb. The cloth warmed under the pressure, the stitched message steady as a pulse. Tell them what happened. I had, I would. I stood and saluted the plaque. Not for ceremony, not for the photograph I wasn't taking, but because the body sometimes needs to say what the mouth has run out of ways to phrase. The sun flashed off the bronze. Heat pressed my shoulders. The wind carried nothing but itself. They called him a traitor to save their pride, I said, voice even. I called him a soldier to save his soul. On the walk back to the truck, the rotor hum returned. Distant, patient, then slipped behind the ridge. The desert kept breathing. So did I. Truth survives command. If this stayed with you, hit subscribe. Come for first-person courage, where lies break, names are cleared, and truth outlives rank.